Bong Joon-ho. A name I am definitely saying incorrectly. And it's a name I haven't heard in 6 years. Wow. Since his blow-up into international stardom with his black comedy thriller, Parasite, winning Joon-ho many well-deserved awards. However, as I said back then, objectively, Parasite is an amazingly well-crafted piece of cinema in many aspects. I mean, just in the camera work alone and how he used it to push and elevate the narrative should and probably is being studied in film schools today. But subjectively, it is not a film I enjoyed. Personally, I felt it dragged on for way too long, and the midpoint turn, the big reveal, was not, in my mind, worth the wait. And the payoff was just okay. And like I said back then, Parasite is a fantastic film that I will probably never watch again. Which I haven't. So, when I heard Joon-ho was making another black comedy thriller, this time in space, I had my reservations. But given Joon-ho's talent and clear passion for filmmaking, it wasn't that hard to give this movie a chance. So, last weekend, I went to go see Mickey 17, and it was pretty okay. Narratively and technical-wise, it's leagues below Parasite, but entertainment-wise, Mickey 17 is much easier to watch. Albeit though, it has a lot of the same issues Parasite had, but worse, which I will get into later. All in all, Mickey 17 is a pretty well-crafted dark comedy sci-fi that skews heavier on the comedy aspect, and only has one or two minor narrative problems. On top of being pretty predictable, which kind of robs from the payoffs, but everything else is very middle of the road. My only concern for general audiences is that it may be a bit too slow for them, as it does linger on for way too long at parts. So, for my highbrow critic score, I give Mickey 17 a 7 out of 10. And for my schmo score, the score for the average Joe Schmo, I give it a 6 out of 10. Now, this is the part where I explain my review scores, and even though there isn't really that much to spoil, like I said, this movie is very predictable, still, if you would like to see Mickey 17 spoiler-free, this is where we part ways. Thanks for showing up, and I want you to have a nice day. Now, as I mentioned before, every aspect from this movie was pretty good. The acting was good, the cinematography was good, not as good as the camera work in Parasite, but perfectly fine. And the narrative, for the most part, was well written, with only one or two scenes that really didn't make sense and should have just been cut out. Like the whole loan shark bit. As Mickey and Timo make it into space, there really is no point in bringing it up again, especially after 4.5 years in space. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, if the loan shark had an agent on board the ship the whole time, why would he randomly wait 4.5 years to start threatening them again? Why? All of the loan shark / Timo scenes at the end of the film really need to be cut out. Because one, like I said, that doesn't make any sense, but worse, they don't serve any purpose for the overall narrative. As in, you could cut those parts out of the movie and it would not impact the story at all. And what is the #1 rule of visual narratives? If it ultimately doesn't serve a purpose, then it doesn't belong in your narrative. And there are a few scenes like that in this, especially at the end, that just drag on with no real reason for being there. You could easily cut out about 30 to 35 minutes of this film, bringing it back down to a more reasonable runtime. And it would probably keep the general audience more engaged with the story, which I feel is gonna be a problem. Even with all the sex and goofy jokes in this movie, I still think it's going to be a bit too long for them, especially with the minuscule attention spans of the current moviegoer. Which is why I gave this film a 6 for my Schmo score. Another issue is the ending is pretty weak, in that, everything just kind of works out for the heroes because they are the heroes. For example, I was confused in the end when a good number of people turned on Marshall, as I thought, with a few exceptions, that the majority of the people on board were all die-hard Marshall loyalists, because that's what the film had shown us up until that point. So, when a large group of people just magically change personalities and ideologies, it doesn't really make sense, and it makes the whole thing feel inauthentic, which immediately pulls you out of the narrative. If they were going to go down this route, they really needed to spend some time showing us dissent between the loyalists and the non-loyalists. Or at the very least show us that there was a population of people that weren't loyal to begin with, because they never did, so the audience has no way of knowing they even exist. And there's a couple of other things, like when Nasha takes Marshall's wife hostage and demands that they help the baby, which is fine, but then Nasha just lets her go. So why didn't they gun Nasha down in that moment? Why would they continue to do what she demanded when she no longer has a hostage as a bargaining chip? Because she's one of the heroes of the story, I guess? So yeah, there's a few edits and cuts that need to be made, mostly all at the end of the movie though. I don't know what happened. And that's why I gave this film a 7 out of 10. It's mostly good, but just needs some quick edits. Altogether though, Mickey 17 is a fun, dark comedy sci-fi that may be a little too long at times, but is entertaining nonetheless. And I would recommend this movie, especially if you're looking for a good date movie. I think this will be a good one for couples. Anyways, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, and I'll catch ya at the next one.